Hello, my name's Ian Price and I'm a Divisional Director for St James's Place. Today I'm going to talk to you about a subject that's really dear to my heart. It's retirement, but not as we know it. Why have I decided to use such an interesting title is going to become apparent because I think we're actually seeing a change in life. I actually feel that the word retirement has all the wrong connotations. Let me take you on a journey. When my father retired many years ago, he got to retirement and it was the end of his life almost. It was the end. Nowadays, I think it's the beginning. So I think retirement, the word, really does have a connotation that people don't want and like. So I'm going to start trying not to use the word retirement because I think all of us want to have a great time when we're not working. And that's the key to me. When you're not working, what you need to do is make sure you've got enough assets to live off when the final salary is paid. One of the biggest changes that's happened in my career, when I started work, believe it or not, 43 years ago, when I started work, the employer said to you when you retired. For males, believe it or not, it was 65. For me, females, it was 60. It was quite a good system then. You got to retirement, you took your tax-free cash, you bought an annuity, and the great news is you died in your 70s to make way for the next generation. Today, that has changed completely. So the decision as to when to retire sits with you as an individual. This is really important to understand and why having the right financial advice at the right time is so important. Believe it or not, I've been doing presentations for a long time, and over the years I picked up lots of different tips and slides about what you should do for financial planning. And I found these old 3 steps to how financial planning should be, and I think they're as relevant today as they were, believe it or not, when I started this 30 years ago. And these steps are as follows. 1. Spend less than you earn. 2. Insure against disasters. 3. Invest wisely. Let me explain what that's like and why it's so important. I can remember a time in my life when it was not possible to save any money at all. We were spending more money than I earned. I know some of you on listening to this will not believe it, but there was a time when interest rates were double digit. Believe it or not, 15% interest rates was the highest I've ever paid. At that time, I was not earning enough money. Every month I was going into debt. Protect against disasters is really relevant to me. And again, this is so important for all of you because it changes as your life changes. And by that, I mean, today I've driven to a place called Northampton to make this presentation. If I get wiped out on the car going home, it's going to be really sad for my wife for about an hour. And then she'll suddenly look at my life insurance policies and realize that actually I left enough money for her to be happy without me being around. And do you know what invest wisely means? It's really simple. Everybody has an approach to investments, and it's really important to get the right advice on those investments. But invest wisely to me means you can sleep at night. I know it's 3 very simple steps, but trust me, they'll hold you in good stead. When you get to retirement, there are so many questions that you can see, and this slide gives you some of the questions you might want to consider. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's important to understand what you need to consider to make sure you retire on the level of income that you want, because that's so important. I was thinking about this just the other day. When people retired, when I first started work, they had a level income all the way through to retirement. What is great now, there are now 3 stages to retirement. And this again is so important. They're the go-go years, the go-slow years, and the no-go years. I love doing this because it brings a smile to my face and everybody tries to get them in their right camp. So in my case, I'm 63, I'm in the go-go years, which is 55 to 75. What does that mean? It means I'm going to spend the kids' inheritance. So when I retire, I'm going to go out there and really enjoy my life. I'm going to travel. I want to spend money. So in the first part of your retirement, you might want to spend more money. That's the go-go years. The go-slow years, we think around 75 to 85. You do slow down. My in-laws are in that period at the minute. Believe it or not, they've now stopped going abroad and they have holidays in the UK. So my mother, who I saw yesterday, who's 96, believe it or not, is in no-go years. She stopped driving, she sits at home and she only goes out in a taxi. This means that your level of income changes. That's why having advice is so important, to make sure you understand how you're going to spend that money in these different stages. Can I just say, there's no hard and fast rules. I met a gentleman the other day who persuaded me, even though he's 86, he's still in the go-go years because he's so healthy. And that's the key to this. Having a healthy retirement is really important, and managing your money in those different stages is why you need and should get advice. It's rather ironic. You look at this slide that's come up here, or this visual that's come up here, it really does prove the point that the earlier you start, the better it is. That's because you've got more time for your money to grow. So the sooner you can start to fund for your retirement, the better, as these figures clearly illustrate the real benefit of starting early. I do accept, though, when you're very young, like talking to my daughters in their 20s, the benefit of funding a pension has not been one of my best presentations ever, because they don't want to put money away until they're old and decrepit like me, is what they actually said the other day. But the real benefit of starting early is important. And again, if you're lucky enough to be a grandparent, you can actually start funding your grandchildren's pensions when they're born. Great opportunities to think about how you can help the next generation with their retirement funding. Retirement today is so different. When I started all those years ago, people just had a pension fund. Nowadays, you've got more and more assets than ever before to consider using to fund your retirement. But can I just say, this is why it's changed and advice is so important. To me, retirement planning is all about tax planning. How do you take your benefits in the most tax efficient way is really important. And again, that's why the advice side comes in so importantly. More and more clients nowadays have other assets. They have ISAs, pensions. Believe it or not, they're going to consider downsizing at retirement. They've got other assets to consider. They've got old age pension. All those assets come into that portfolio, which you need to consider how you're going to use in retirement. And as I said, tax planning is the key to a happy and successful retirement planning. The great news about pensions in some ways is it can be really complicated. And that's why getting the right advice at the right time is important. Today we have things like the annual allowance and we have lifetime allowance. As you can see from the illustration, this gives you an indication of the limits. For most people, believe it or not, it's not a problem, but for some people it really is a problem. So you need to make sure you fully understand what funds you've got and how much you're contributing on a year-by-year basis, so you don't get any increased tax liability. Fun enough, when you get to retirement, one of the questions you've got to get in your own mind is, what type of retirement do you want? Now, I'm very clear. I want to be a spender in retirement. I have done all my planning to get to a great level, so when I stop work, I don't need to create more wealth for my family. They've been getting it all the way through my life. So to me, when I'm in retirement, I want to have enough money to live off, but I'm not about creating more wealth. What I want to make sure is that my money lasts as long as I do. And the one thing that's still very uncertain, which is good news, by the way, is you never know when you're going to die. And that's good, but it's also bad, because if you knew when you were going to die, we could plan brilliantly, but we can't. Therefore, that's the last golden nugget. We've got to make sure that all the assets you've got do last until you retire. I know it's a very emotive subject, but if you look at myself and my wife, the one thing that's certain in retirement, there will be a phase where one of us won't be alive. So making sure we manage the money, so when something happens to me, because my wife told me I will definitely be going first, she's going to have a lifestyle that she wants to continue. So again, understanding what you want in retirement is so important. Sometimes, when you're talking to people, we talk about what's called pre-retirement. What should I do before I get to retirement? Believe it or not, the most important thing to do before you get to retirement is actually review what you've got. I'm amazed how many people don't understand what they've got. What schemes have you been a member of? Where is that money? Is it invested in the right way for what you're trying to achieve? I'd always recommend finding out what the state's going to provide. That can be done through something called a BR19, really whizzy little form that everybody loves, but you can find out exactly what your state benefits. Because let's face it, we're all going to get state benefits. And I think they go a long way to helping you understand how much you're going to need from retirement. The other thing I do pre-retirement, which is different to my parents' generation, is most of us are lucky enough to have another partner. In my case, it's Nicole. I need to understand what she's got and when her benefits are paid because she's younger than me. So having a bit of a plan prior to retirement is really important. So the starting point is review what you've got. And somewhere along the lines, part of this pre-retirement approach has to be, how much money do you actually want in retirement? And believe it or not, I think that's the hardest thing to do, because we're sitting down, committing to paper just how much money you're going to need on a month by month basis to cover your fixed costs and then your incidental costs, which could be things like holidays, marriages for your kids or grandchildren, whatever. So pre-retirement, sitting down, having a really good look at what you've got is relevant. So when you get to retirement, so we call it post-retirement, what should you do? What it is, it's all about an annual review. Everything to me has to be done on an annual basis. Circumstances change so quickly. So again, what I would be wanting to do is sit down with somebody and understand exactly what their expenditure wants to be in the forthcoming year. What do they expect to spend? Is there anything unforeseen that they might want to spend? It might be replacing a car. So each year, sit down with your advisor, review what you've got, review the fund values of what you've got, what other income you've got coming in, and then again, just check that it's going to cover what you're talking about. Great example would be to use myself. I've made it very clear to my lovely wife that in 10 years' time, we will downsize. So part of our retirement strategy is in about 8 years' time, I'm going to start looking to sell my house and release some more money that will need investing. It's just that I need a bit of a smaller house. I don't want as big a house as I've got. So we're clearly going to downsize. That's part of my post-retirement strategy. And I think most people have got this, but you need to do it on an annual basis. What I would say is when you're talking about your retirement, do get the children involved. My daughters are involved in my retirement planning. They know exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Because to me, they need to understand the decisions I'm making and the impact it will have on the family on a long term. So including the children or the next generation to me is really, really important. As ever, when you talk about financial planning, financial advice, or whatever you want to call it, there are so many questions that you need to ask. But please don't worry. Our job is to make your life simple. We want to sit down, understand exactly what you've got to date, what you want, and if there's any shortfall. And in making sure that shortfall is a manageable shortfall is important. That's why starting to talk to a financial advisor as soon as you possibly can really will have a massive impact in your retirement planning. I want to describe retirement planning like sailing a yacht on the sea. You go on the water, you know where you're going to go, you know that destination, but rest assured the wind will blow you off course. Our job is to keep you back on course all the way along the line. This year we've seen a massive change in society with COVID. That has blown some people back off course, but believe it or not, it's put other people back on a different course because they've decided to change the way they want to retire. So having a clear plan of when you want to retire, getting the right advice at the right time is key crucial. I've said it a lot during this presentation, but it's so important to me. Having the advice is relevant. The advice at the right time is more important than ever before. There are now so many options when you consider retirement. You need to decide what is right for you and your family.